Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for coming, joining us today. So we have a special guest. So that is Professor Marianne Hartley, or called Annie Hartley. And I think Annie is probably the preferred form to interact with Annie. So Annie is a clinical doctor and a computer scientist. And she's really bringing together the medical world and the computer science world to build AI, or to bring AI into medical practice. And I have to say, I had already a little preview this morning, and Annie is really doing amazing work, not only in the lab, but really also bringing it out into the real world to generate impact. And I think that is also a mission we have here, particularly at SEC. So we are looking forward to a great presentation. Welcome, Annie. Thanks for spending time with us. The floor is yours.
Oh. No, thank you very much for just inviting me and for the time that you took, and it's very last minute, so I really appreciate having me over. And you might already see that, the name of my lab, you'll see it doesn't really, you don't often think of global health and humanitarian response and Singapore in the same sentence, right? This is not a low resource setting, it's quite the opposite. And so I would also like to explain to you in this presentation why actually low resource settings and optimizations in machine learning and this kind of technology that we are building, specifically developed for low resource settings, is actually very relevant for high resource settings as well. And what we are doing in Switzerland is actually quite relevant here too. So yeah, I didn't expect myself to ever be presenting my work in Singapore, and but it's a pleasant surprise, and I'm really honored to hopefully have the opportunity to work with these high resource settings so that we can inject real high level ambitious clinical standards in the tools that we are developing for lower resource settings and humanitarian response. So yes. My name is Annie, and the title of the talk has got two things that we have to maybe break down. I'm going to be speaking about a model or a series of models called Meditron, and then a platform to evaluate those models called the Moove. And this isn't usually just a presentation. If there are any clinical people in the crowd here or online, normally this is an invitation as well, and it's an invitation to join the Moove to make an AI chatbot, right? So LLMs adapted to your setting, right? And it's to own that technology and to be vigilant about when it goes wrong and to adapt it through validation and to make sure that it can be used in implementation. So let's just get down to what these two things actually mean. So Meditron, as I said, it's not just one model, it's actually a suite of open LLMs for medical knowledge that we originally adapted specifically for limited resource settings with the International Committee for the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders and others. And then the Moove is this platform. It's an acronym, but it also, you can think of it as moving models, right? But it stands for massive, and the M is really important. Massive is really important because how many questions can you ask a chatbot, right? It's infinite. How many responses can you get? Infinite. And that permutation space we really have to fill with the way that we can ask questions, challenge these models, and evaluate them. So massive is important. It's open, but it's not really open. You'll see that we only are inviting experts and the best experts in the world, which is why I think Singapore is a very important setting for us, as is Switzerland and other high resource settings. It's online because it's just a platform, and we'll do a live demo. It's a validation and evaluation platform where we're asking doctors to really critique these tools so that they preserve their vigilance, and then that we can use that to feed back into the models to really co-develop these tools. So we're saying, to doctors, you don't need to have any expertise in AI to be an active co-developer in these tools and make them and own them yourself, right? So just a little bit about what we do. So LIGHT, it stands for the Laboratory for Intelligent Global Health and Humanitarian Response Technologies. And we're based in 3 places. So it's mostly in EPFL. That's where we're in the School of Computer Science, and we have most of our technical development there. And then we're also in Harvard School of Public Health in a lab really dedicated, just like CREATE would be, but it's really dedicated to implementation science. So the science of bringing these tools into practice and proving that they work, right? And you'll see that that's really important to us. it's like if I have to summarize some of the important words that we're doing in the lab, it's scalable, and we have to like make these tools at scale and make them available, because these technologies are often not available to lower resource settings, so we have to scale their access. We want to make sure that they are genuinely implementable, and when you are working with like ICRC and MSF and these humanitarian response organizations, you're working under pressure. They don't have time to do like just research for the sake of a paper. They really want the research to end up directly into their practice, and they want it, and that's what they do. It might sound corny or cheesy, but they save lives. That's what they do. It's their main thing that they're doing, and they want to make sure that these are the highest possible standard. And then we're also working with the WHO and others who want to validate tools and make a standard for the validation so that you can actually use them and control them. So we just follow what our lab is really doing here. It's we first collect data, so we very much go into the field, right? So I'm a medical doctor as well, but more as like I do it as a volunteer capacity now, mostly in humanitarian response or going back to my home country of South Africa and working there. But we do embed. We've got clinicians in our group, and we go and embed, and we try to collect data. So because often it doesn't exist, right? So we collect that data, and then we try to make sure that we don't own the data, right? It might sound counterintuitive, but it's very important that we decolonialize the ownership of data, especially in low resource settings. Data is money. Data is really, really valuable, and it's laborious to collect. And if we make people share it just to be represented in these tools, they lose their ownership, right? They lose a huge amount of assets that they could maybe make a grant against later. And so we have to respect the ownership of data, and we make platforms to do that. And I can show you, if we have time, we have a platform called Disco for distributed collaborative learning, where people can make models but without sharing their data. So privacy preserving and ownership preserving, sovereignty preserving platforms. Then once we do that, then we make the model, right? And then we go into the field. We don't just stop there, because it's tempting to just like publish the model. But we do try to then bridge that gap in the implementation pathway and go back to the places where we collected the data in the first place and make these tools that allow us to use the model in practice and contextualize it to that setting. Now, as I said before, like these are just some snapshots of like where I'm working and where we work. We work in several countries across mostly Africa, but now we are also expanding into India and others. But you can kind of see, like, these are photos from outside of the hospitals where I'm working. We use a lot of like point of care ultrasound. This is some of the patients we're working with, some of the conditions. This was during Ebola in the epidemic in West Africa. And you can see, like, you can just imagine like AI, these are not like if you asked like ChatGPT, say, give me a photo that represents AI, you're not exactly going to get something like this, right? They are so like diametrically opposite. Like low resource setting versus AI often doesn't like come into the conversation. It's like what low resource settings require low tech, right? It's like low tech solutions. But we argue that it couldn't be further from the truth, right? These kinds of settings, the statistics are horrendous. I was just telling you earlier, like I know the only pulmonologist in Namibia. There's one, right? And he lives in Bern, right? There's so few doctors, it's impossible to catch up. There's so few resources, there's so few alternatives that we actually have to have technological innovations to replace them. And we're not replacing any doctors, because how can you replace a doctor that doesn't exist? So when people have got this narrative of, oh, you're going to replace doctors and it's going to be so dangerous, this is the exact kind of environment where this kind of technology doesn't have the negative consequences that are being advertised and can only be better than something that doesn't exist, that's not there, right? And this is why we actually have to strive for the highest levels of safety. And who doesn't want a safer chatbot? Because safety in these places, it's so important. There's no safety nets in these environments. So if you mess up here, you can literally kill someone because you're not going to have an alternative. So we have to strive for the highest levels of safety. This is not low tech. The efficiency has to be even higher. We're working under constraints where there's no GPUs, where there's intermittent connectivity. It's hard to develop things in these settings. And therefore you need to have like the strongest optimization strategies as well, especially when we're working in places that are volatile, like where MSF and ICRC are working. And they need to be extremely robust and easy to use. And while we thought that this was very much something that you only have in low resource settings, we're now starting to see that our biggest customers in this way, we're not selling anything, but the people who are using our tools are actually in Switzerland. And because low resource settings are, with large language models like this, everywhere. there's no hospitals in Switzerland that can host a model as big as ChatGPT. So they do want smaller models, they do want more efficient models. And so we see that this is actually not just specific to low resource settings. And I just want to say like why, I just give like a story about like why it's important in our settings. I want to give you a story about like a community health worker, just to give you like an insight into where we're working and to understand what's happening right now, right? This isn't some future thing, it's like right now. So there's Carol over here, who's a community health worker in Kenya. And she's here in a household, and she's busy visiting the household in Kenya. And it's a guy who's just had a stroke, and he's recovering, and the wife is like really upset, and she doesn't know if he's going to stay sick or if he's going to go back, but he's recovering well. And so she's asking these questions about what is a stroke, and Carol doesn't know. She's got a few weeks of training, that's all she has. And while Carol never used to go and do Google before, right? Now she goes on and she asks in her own language. I've like written it out here, but you've all done this before on ChatGPT. In her own language, in Swahili, in ChatGPT, she asks, I'm a community health worker. There's this woman. She's got this husband. He's got a stroke. Long story. What is a stroke? Tell me. And in her own language, back to her voice to voice, right, comes back with a very reasonable answer that she can understand, that calms down the wife, that is better than anything I could have ever given Carol myself, ever. It's not because I don't know this. I'm a doctor. I could have given her this information, but I couldn't have given it to her in her own language, and at that time and in that place. And that's why there's nothing more valuable than not just the right information, but the right information at the right time and in the right place. And she went even further, where she's now like taking his blood pressure, which she's trained to do, and she sees it's really high. And just to see the value that this can bring right now, right? He goes, oh, well, it's really high. So are you taking your medications? And he goes, yeah, I'm taking my medications. Here they are. And he puts them on the table. And I look at them and I'm like, ooh, Carol, how do you know if this is actually high blood pressure medication? She goes, well, I don't know. Because if you look at it carefully, you can actually see that it's loratadol and not a drug that sounds similar. This is an antihistamine. So he's been given the wrong drug and he's been taking it, and now he's at risk of having a stroke. But she doesn't know, so what does she do? She takes a photo by herself, no training required. She was not trained to use GPT, just like people are not trained to use WhatsApp. And she puts it in, and I can't see my thing here, there it is. And she puts it in and she asks, is this high bloods medication, right? And she gets the answer. And this is a happy story, right? She now was able to say, no, you're not taking your medication, go to the hospital tomorrow. And his treatment was changed, and his life could have been saved by that, because that would cause another stroke. So this is a happy story, and it shows the potential of these things. It shouldn't be surprising, but this is happening right now. That's what's surprising. It's happening right now, and it's happening much faster than we think. And we have to make sure that we can validate these tools to make sure that that happy story is the majority of the case, and that we can actually integrate this into the way people are using these tools on a day-to-day basis. And to make sure that that information is actually the right information, so that we can deliver it at the right time and at the right place. So what we're doing here then is just to orient ourselves. Of course, I'm going to be speaking about Meditron, which is then the model, and the Moove, which is this platform that allows us to contextualize and validate models and improve them. And then I'll also, if there's time, just speak about something called Disco, which allows us to make sure that the data that is collected doesn't have to be shared, so we can preserve ownership. So this is a federated and decentralized learning platform that's integrated into a website, basically installation-free, code-free interface. So then I will just go into this kind of just more basically to say, first of all, we all know, okay, that that an AI kind of algorithm is just data, compressed data. But when data looks like this in low resource setting, it's an issue. And even in a high resource setting, you don't have access to it because of privacy concerns. And here, this was, in my setting, like we don't share data for a range of reasons, right? And here it was because I took a photo here. I wanted to go and see in my hospital where the files were. So I go in. I'm trying to get into the door, and there's a guy who comes in. He comes rushing out. It's like, don't go in there. So I was pretty impressed. I was like, data security is top notch here. There's like a dude like that's like protecting the door. I was impressed, and I congratulate him, and he says, no, it's not that. It's that there are snakes living inside there, right? So they had actually made like a hole, and they started to put to put like they just started to throw things into the hole, and then when it piled up, they made another hole. So like this data is not available for many reasons, right? You know, there was a vivarium in there. So like we have to make sure that we can actually have alternatives. And not expect the unexpected. Even if we go and do a trial that collects all of the stuff and makes it available, what is in those files? Who are the people collecting the data at the moment? Are they people that we trust? Are they doctors? Are they nurses? Are they even trained? So it's really important that we don't expect things that are unexpected, right? And even if we use PubMed, right? Less than 3% of what is on PubMed represents the African continent. You know, can you imagine how much of it represents the small nation of Singapore? Right? So I think it's important that we understand that representation matters. So we can't expect it, and we shouldn't expect it, and all of our foundation models are by definition imperfect, right? So we have imperfect models, and what we need to do is not retrain a model every single time because it's wasteful, but adapt them through use, right? And so what we want to do is, of course, this might seem obvious because you're doing this with ChatGPT already, but the difference is that, and ChatGPT is doing it for itself, we have to make this available for clinicians and to make sure that it's available and owned by people who can actually control it, because we have to validate these tools. If we take ChatGPT and we go and say, well, let's go and spend $1 million and validate it, right? The thing is that they can just go and update it the next day, and then everything is invalidated. And they don't have to tell us how they've updated it, and they may update it with things that are like maybe like they have an advertising agreement with a big pharma company or something, and so you don't know how they are updating it, and you have no control over that. And this is about gaining control over these systems and making them available, and making this technology that is you've already experienced it, but making it available openly, and allowing us to adapt it through use so that we can have adapted foundation models. So how this fits in is that, you know, we make Meditron, which is our platform of models. We have a whole load of them. We can put it on any base model. So we can Meditronize any model. So we've done it for DeepSeek and Gemma and Llama and all sorts of bases, and we're also making our own base models. What we do is we try to make it as good as possible. So sure, we carefully curate the PubMed stuff. We really carefully expert curate the guidelines that represent various. These are just like the countries that we're working in for our randomized control trials, but we do it with the whole world as much as we can, right? So we really scrape all the guidelines possible, and hundreds of clinicians helping us. And then we take that and we adapt it through use through this program called the Moove, and then we make a whole lot of for-purpose models. So it'll be like Meditron, South Africa, gynecology and obstetrics, Meditron, Singapore, whatever, right? So emergency medicine or something. And then we can have these models that people can control, and they can be very specific and more accurate because they are so targeted. So it allows us to focus on some values rather than of course, it's a huge amount of technical development, and I welcome your questions on that as well. But it allows us to focus on values, which I think is important. It's about local ownership, right? It's about community alignment, getting communities together to make their own models. And it helps because now we're in hospitals, and then the whole hospital has made that model, and then they come back and they go, oh, well, now I want to make sure that I can actually use this model that I've made, and they advocate for GPUs to be put into their hospital so that they can own their model locally, and they can. It's a commercial license if they want it, right? It's an open license, but they can go and it's permissive, so they can go take this and make their own startup if they want to, and it gives value back to people. We make sure that they really take experts, our local experts, to validate it, to co-create these models, but also to gain trust, right? So when a model is made by the best doctors in your country, people want to then use it because they trust it. But it's a really important, probably the most important thing is that it makes it accountable. You can't just get these, snake oil salesmen coming in and saying, I've got the best model and you should use mine. You can now put them to the test and say, which is the best model? Then you can say, prove it, put it on the platform, make sure that we can test it in a blinded way and have this public oversight. Allows us to have continuous learning, which is then dynamic and updatable, so you can always update it. And then we can also have this representative evaluation. So as I said, we make a suite of models. We've got various sizes. So this is on Meditron 3 is our latest iteration of them. So from 2 billion parameters to 70 billion parameters, we are on various base models. And then we also have and this is useful, right? Because this means that this 2 billion parameter model can fit on phones, especially when we do some pruning and that sort of stuff. And then this one can fit on a standard laptop, on a desktop computer, onto like A100s or even V100 GPUs, because you just want to like do inference. So, and then we've also got our multimodal version of our model, which is modular. So you can pick and choose the modalities that are relevant to you. So if you've got CT scans or X-rays or sound or whatever, you pick and choose those, and we just train the adapters, which makes it really like low cost training, right? And we've made this like pipeline, as I said. It's like gone from gone from one model to a suite of models, which we Meditronize, to a pipeline that you can make yourself. So we can have any base model, including your own. And then we have this like pipeline that we call More, which is a massive multimodal open RAG and extraction pipeline that allows you to put any kind of data inside, and then it like makes it machine readable, so that you can then put it into any base model. And this allows us, you know, we can take PDFs. PDFs are a curse to humanity. They're really difficult to read. And we can also then do it with a whole lot of other kinds of stuff as well, right? So that's great. So we try to make these available so that people can then use these models, and we want to make them as good as possible. So here's how you define how good they are, what is performance. So just if I'm comparing it to GPT-4, you can see that usually we are doing it like these really difficult multiple choice questions. So this is the Indian exam, this is the US exam for licensing medical doctors. It takes us months to pass these exams, right? We have to prepare for months. The average pass rate is 60% for humans. So this is already extremely impressive that we're able to get 72.6%, and we're even beating and we're at a disadvantage, right? This is 70 billion parameters, and if you like, I know that probably everyone is like a machine learning savvy here, but 1 billion parameters. If we're going to like take parameters and like kind of extrapolate it to brain size, like synapses in a brain, like connections, like neurons and connections. 1 billion parameters. A nice way to remember it is the size of one honeybee's brain. Right? So 1 bee, right? And so if you've got 70 bee, that's like the average swarm of bees. And then like in terms of just connections and synapses in a brain. And then you've got something here with GPT-4 where it's like trillions. It's the size of a small dog, right? So I mean, like, this is a huge difference in size and capacity, but we're able to like make it very specific. And then when it's specific, it tends to perform well in that setting. So this is amazing, and we're really happy about it. But we have to remember that medicine is not multiple choice, and this is not how medicine works. And you haven't asked your doctor how they did in their exam, right? You don't do that screening before you go to your doctor. You assume, right? And we must remember that this can really fall like into the trap of Goodhart's law of when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, right? And if in lots of the models that are out there that are claiming to be the best, you go and ask them, how are you doing? And the answer is C or B, because it doesn't know how to speak anymore, right? And this is the good example of why you need better and like better ways of surprising and challenging the models. These are open on the internet, so you can cheat from them. You can train on these things, right? They're oversimplified. We care about accuracy a lot in medicine, but not that much. Medicine is an art, right? So it's about empathy. It's about alignment with guidelines. It's about a lot more than just accuracy. And these are static and outdated, and they're based on high resource settings, right? And so this is important because our patient journey is different in each place. So in South Africa, for example, we have traditional healers, which are really important, and it's the same in every country. Even in the US and here, people still take traditional medicine in different ways, right? And it changes the patient journey completely. 80% of people in Africa, at least from the WHO standard, first seek care at a traditional healer before coming to our clinics. And here are some photos of outside the places I'm working, right? So these are herbs that you can find. And now just imagine a next word predictor, right? Here, this guy is curing, I know it's in French here, but this is in Cameroon. And he's curing something called worms of the woman. Right? Worms of the woman. What does that even mean? And what is the next word? What is the next token after worms of the woman? Has Llama ever been exposed to this? Right? In Nigeria, I'd ask someone like, what's the latest conspiracy theory? And it's like, eating chameleons causes COVID. Try to put that into ChatGPT and see what comes out, right? These are semantic representations of disease that are really contextual, and the way people understand their disease needs to be represented in these models and tested. I had a patient in South Africa who came to me and said she was pregnant, and I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, because she was 90 years old, right? She's like, but it's in my knee, right? So a pregnancy in the knee, I know what it means, right? As a doctor, it's like, it's clear she's got a swelling in her knee, but that's how she presents it. So we have to represent this kind of semantic representation of our patients. And you might think, well, this is crazy. They're coming to most of these are just laxatives, never works, actually puts our patients at risk. It's a terrible thing. We should just outlaw it. But what you don't see here, which is really important, is a cue. And this is the alternative. If people want to come to a medical doctor, this is their reality, stretching about 1 kilometer around the hospital, right? And what are they all queuing for? As a big bottleneck to information. They're coming to the doctor to ask a question, right? Oh, that's strange. Okay. Okay, I got some weird stuff going on here, but it's fine. So they're asking a question. So this is like an issue, and we need to give alternatives to these people to find information in other places, right? And what I was telling about, like fake news is that example of the chameleon. But here, I mean, this is Head and Shoulders up here, right? And here we've got like, treatments for COVID. We've got all sorts of things. Here we've got Dr. Rashid, who is offering his services in South Africa. All sorts of things. Multi-talented guy, right? We've got short boys to bring money. What does that mean? Right? I don't know what this means. I'm South African. I don't know what that means. Okay. And my favorite is a dog. My favorite is lioness / body pains / vomiting all the time. Right, so it's a nice combination, but it gets less funny when you see like number 16 is not so hot with these whole formatting, and the first number 16, right, is that people with HIV/AIDS can be helped. Now you can imagine the nonsense that comes out of this guy. This is not a traditional healer. This is obviously a quack, but we have to make sure that we test our models contextually with this kind of information, right? So we did, and this is just showing you the Swiss results in our first model. So this was actually Meditron 2, but just to show you the potential of it, that we are even much better now, and I'll show you how it looks. 150,000 evaluations with 700 medical doctors, and 85% of the time, they actually identified it as positive. And so we are going beyond just accuracy on its own, but we say, within accuracy, did it understand the question? Did it have logical reasoning? What is the factual basis for rationale? Did it have relevant content? Does it align with clinical guidelines? Did you trust it? What was its confidence? Was it harmful? How harmful was it? And you can see over here, possibility of harm high, right? So this is good, this is neutral, and here is a high possibility of harm, right? Over there. And on that high possibility of harm, that much of it was severe harm. Now, I would like, for me personally, like as a doctor, I would love to have statistics like this for myself, right? I'm quite sure that if I was forced to do every single kind of medical specialty, I'm quite sure that my statistics would not be this good, right? But what are the statistics? What is normal? And we have to make sure that we know what we're trading off against, right? So if this possibility of harm is high, I gave the example this morning of like, let's say that it hallucinates and it says something absolutely wild. And it says here, okay, well, how to treat diabetes, and it says, well, you must amputate the person's leg. I want to know which doctor is going to go ahead with that, right? Or which clinician. So how do people behave when they are faced with hallucinations that are dangerous in reality? If it omits something, does the clinician who is trained appropriately fill in the gap, right? And so that needs to be tested. And we need to understand what the trade-off is. Maybe in a very high resource setting where we have the best doctors around, this kind of possibility of harm is unacceptable, but the doctors are so good that they can fill in the gaps. Maybe in a lower resource setting, the alternative is that the person who's there doesn't exist, or has got such a high risk that it's actually so much better that it's a clear win. But we have to prove it, right? We can't assume. And so we also go into clarity, tone, helpfulness, language as well. And so it's just flipped. It's flipped now. I'll show you the new results. But when we had GPT-4, not GPT-4o, people preferred Meditron 65% of the time over ChatGPT, right? Which is great. Now it's flipped with GPT-4o, but we're on par with it, which is really nice. So just to show you what we're trying to do here is we go to hospitals and we say, hey, please gather your colleagues, ask our chatbots difficult questions related to your context, and then rate the answers of the chatbot. And then they are incentivized because they can then claim their rewards. They can publish their own findings. The data is theirs. And then they can also get a chatbot back for their setting that's adapted to their settings. So I just want to show you then the actual platform. So I guess here, oops, showing you all my my things here. Sorry, I'm trying not to show you all of my emails, but there we go. Okay, so here's the actual platform, right? Trying not to do that. And you can just see, so this is Moove. So here it's massive. So I already told you why it's massive. It's open, but not really, because you can see I'm logged in, right? So Annie Hartley, and I'm an expert, so we don't have random people on here. And we don't want some random inexperienced person correcting our models. It's online because it's just a website, right? And it is a validation and evaluation platform, right? So you can see what we're trying to do. Co-design AI with your expertise, right? Like a collaborative platform where experts can share their knowledge and align AI with real-world medical standards. And we can have this transparent community of expert validation, all the things that I was telling you about, continuous real-world testing, etc. But it's not just for Meditron, and it shouldn't just be for Meditron. Meditron is just one of the models that we want to control so that you can have it, make sure that you at least have one that's open. But if you have your own model, you can put it in here too, so add your own model, right? And we've got Meditron, but we also have Legitron, which is the large language model for international humanitarian law, where and that is doing much better than ChatGPT 4.0, right? And so here we've got lawyers who are from the ICRC and from humanitarian organizations testing our model. So then you can kind of add any model you like. And there's lots of people who are participating in this. And as I said, one of the people who are participating the most is Switzerland. And I'll show you some results from them because it's kind of closest to the setting. And I told you we gamify it a little bit. We ask them to ask tough questions and rate the answers and whatever. They get some points. And then they get rewards as they engage, and they can publish their results and get a model back. But just to show you how it works, you can ask a question. I don't know if you have a question to ask, but you can ask any question. I'm not feeling creative, so what is diabetes? You can ask any question you want. And then it will answer, and generally, I don't know which one I'm in. So yeah, so here it's what's it called? Blinded. So you don't know which model is which. So we've got one that's over here that's got pretty good results. It seems reasonable. It's a bit long, this one, I would say, but it's fine, and it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to vote for this one. I prefer it, and I just don't like some things here. Maybe we can say that we don't like it's too long, and we can just remove that, and then we can type in whatever we want and save it. And then you can kind of see over here that we've now removed something, and that we've typed in something else. And you can imagine if this was something that was bad, we can use that information to preserve the vigilance of the doctors, where we next time we can highlight this kind of semantic similarity of the things that people had problems with that they were correcting. Then we can say, well, this one was worse because it was unclear or whatever else. It was contextually inappropriate. We can say whatever was wrong with it. And here we can say aligned with guidelines. All of the kind of the rationale is here. And it had logical reasoning, whatever else. Maybe it was harmful, maybe it wasn't fair. We can do whatever we think is appropriate and criticize it, and then we can submit it. I'm not going to submit it because this is live, and this is coming from the University Hospital of Lausanne. There's another one in Geneva and others, so I'm not going to poison the well. But what you can do here is you go to dashboard, and then you can see that it's taking a bit longer because I'm connecting through, I think, through the US. But for me, this is me up here. So for Annie, right? So for me, I've never done any, I've never submitted anything. So for me, it's 0, right? And then what's nice about this is that so this is for me, if I get authorship, I need to ask at least 15 questions and rate 30 in total. And then I get authorship on papers. And then over here for organizational level, they only needed to ask 600 questions. and now I see that they've done 7,000, right? So they find it useful and they're doing it really well. And if you go to the review tab, you can kind of see all of the questions that they're answering. And actually it's slow now, but actually we've adapted the platform to work even in like, 2G settings kind of thing. So it does work there as well, which is quite nice. I'm in one working group where they've asked 300 questions. This is infectious disease. And you can see all of the questions they've asked, and you can see there's one review needed. So we ask for 3 reviews for each thing. So here's a question, so we can see someone else has already asked this question. Now I can vote for the best one, and the whole thing starts again, right? And then you can go to reports to see in the working group, we can kind of see these are all the different, so every single service in this hospital participated. So we had like all of the people in the hospital participating for free, where no one was paid, because obviously they would just, humans are terrible, because when you click a button, you get $10 or something, then they would just obviously just click buttons to get $10, and they wouldn't really care. So here people are really motivated by getting a good model back, right? And so if they put nonsense in, they'll get nonsense out. So here if we go to, I don't know, there's so many. We can go to pediatrics, and then you can kind of see the questions asked, so the number of questions they asked, all the questions are down here, and then the average grades that they gave the model. So you can see it's really good. It's out of 5, and then 3 would be neutral. So they're scoring it between 4 and 4.4 out of 5. And that's just Meditron, and they can download their own CSV file. They've already published all the different sections have published their results, and then you can also see, like, if you wanted to see like how the model compares, you can compare GPT-4 and Meditron, for example, and then find the average comparisons of the models. So you can come and see like how each model has performed in each place, and this is quite nice. So I can select them to compare. So it's and this, right? And then you can kind of see how they compare as well. So I'm just waiting for this to load. And then, and this is where I was telling you, like, before GPT 4.0, we had, like, it will load here soon, but you can see here, it's just a little bit off. So you can see that they prefer now with GPT 4.0, GPT-4 like 60% of the time, or maybe even like 70 over Meditron. But the difference is just so slight. So we're very happy with this, that they are, here you go. So you can see like it's tied over here, and it's 20%. It used to be flipped, but since 4.0 came out, it's better. But that's fine, because we're really happy with that our model is as good as this massive model. And yeah, then you can see in ICRC, where they are doing the Meditron model, you can see that it's looking really good. So we can go to the reports of the model report, and we can see also how GPT-4 compares to Meditron, for example. And here it's beating it, so it's really, really exciting, because here we've got 60% of people, of lawyers, prefer our small little Meditron to theirs, to GPT-4. We've got the open RAG and extraction, so you can put anything in here, and you can RAG stuff from videos to anything. And we try to make it as cool as possible, because we want people to not just revert to using ChatGPT on their own. So last thing that I'll say before closing, because I'm on time, so that's very good. But I just wanted to kind of show you where we're putting this, right? And we are doing like what I just showed you now is that we've got this hypothetical scenario testing. So this is like there's 3 phases. This is the first phase, the hypothetical phase. So here we've got like a doctor sitting in the comfort of their own home, asking and thinking of questions. And then there's a hypothetical situation, right? So no ethics are needed. No, it's easy. We do it immediately. So we go to a hospital and say, do you want to join? And they come. And then we have 2 chatbots, right? That give the answers. And then we choose between them, and we rate them and everything. And then we get our friends to also rate them, so that we don't have like some crazy anti-vaxxer or something over here that's giving all of the direction. We make sure that we have majority vote. And then we have like, that's good. We have a go, no go. And so it seems good now. So now we're going into the next phase, and we're doing a silent trial where we enroll patients, and you see all the gray stuff. The patients are not touched. Okay, this is standard. It's what I was telling you before about like making sure we know what we're trading off against. So we go and follow this prospective data collection, not retrospective. So we follow the patient, we recruit them, we find out what happens in reality. The patient goes home, and we follow them up, right? And say, are you okay? Did you have to take antibiotics? Did you come back to the hospital? Are you cured? Was it correct? And then we also, in our settings, we obviously also find out if they have died, because we are in high stakes in low resource settings, that we are looking to see if they've been treated appropriately and whether they have lived or died after the treatment, which is important for our partners. So we try to find out their endpoint, and then we put all this information retrospectively into the model, right? We say, what would you have done? So this is counterfactual comparison between the plan that they gave here and the plan that comes out there. And if we're okay with this, we say, you know what? It would have done pretty well. Then we go to the next phase, where we do an interventional trial and compare. And here you can see in orange that we've got the model already in the consultation, and it's affecting patient care. And then you can see the safety endpoints. We can compare, and you can then have this real, like you can imagine that leaderboard, remember? Which is the best model for your setting? Now we can say, which is the provably safest model for your setting as well. So I'll stop there. If you want to hear about Disco, I do have a few slides, but it's like really quick, and it's also like it's a live thing. It's that platform that allows you to, with a few clicks of a button, learn even big language models. So we do, well, small language models, sorry. So small, large language models. You can even train them in your browser, right, without sharing any data. So we've got these platforms. And I just, this is the most important slide, of course. It doesn't fit all the students. We've got 52 students. We are running this on master students. So this guy is our technology director, for example. He's a master thesis student. It's very heavy to do this. The technology is phenomenal. Many people have already downloaded it, and it's been shown. We've got obviously a clinical director, so a lot of doctors, medical doctors in our group as well. And what's wonderful is that we also have the support and guidance from the EPFL community. So we've got phenomenal, academia. We need to stand up for ourselves a little bit. We are not competing against these big companies, right? There's no competition with industry, because industry cannot compete against us, because we have got something that they do not have, which is neutrality, and we've got something that they do not have, which is expertise that is just this untapped pool. It's a never-ending pool of phenomenal students and talent that comes through, and we have to work in resource-constrained settings, because that's where we are, and we make more efficient and better models in the end. And Google and Meta are coming to us to rate and rank their models because they don't have the neutrality to do it themselves. And so I think that we really need to, like, if we collaborate and we can get this kind of stuff big enough through collaborations, we can actually make something much more valuable. So yeah, that's it from me. But if you have any questions, or if you want to see the Disco platform, I'm happy to further. Okay. If there's any questions or...
I'm curious, what's the difference, what happened to ChatGPT 4.0 that made it better than
Okay, so So for the people online, the question was, what happened to ChatGPT 4.0 that made it just that little bit better? It was always head-to-head. So when they upgraded GPT 4.0, it just made it a little bit better. And what was better with it, I think mostly, when we looked at the differences, was that it improved its formatting. So it made it more, people liked reading it more, and it was a little bit more complete. Where we really failed, and we always fail on this is our worst one that they score at normally like 3.9 out of 5, is our completeness. So what we do with Meditron, because we're forcing it to answer in one go. Of course, the next phase would be a multi-turn conversation, but because we force it to do it in one go, they were more complete than us in the end, and that pushed them over the line. I think that was the most important thing. And yeah, it's a better model, right? So clear. It's such a generalist model that it understands the world better, right? So bigger models are usually better in understanding more generalist things, and medicine is generalist. These models are better. We are trying to match them so that they are an actual alternative, and we've done. I think we are there. People have proven that they like it as much. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering to what extent the model is the data is only in the chain. So what about data contamination, which makes maybe your model better to perform?
Yeah.
So to what extent are you sure that data that are using for evaluation are not informed?
Okay. Very important question for the people online. It was like, she saw that we had evaluated initially, right? We had evaluated on these multiple choice questions that are just openly available on the internet. So what's the proof that you haven't just trained on these? And then it's just regurgitating it. So there's two things that I'll say here. First is just a general thing. We kind of do want our models to regurgitate things. We're okay with it. We're okay. I'm also okay with things that the model being a memory bank. It's okay if it's a bit overfitting on some things. It's okay if it regurgitates facts, right? But we don't want it to just regurgitate the evaluation metric, which would then be not representative for how it's performing outside. Okay, so there's a balance. Our group did not train on it, and we know we didn't train on it because we didn't do it. But says who? Right? So what we did, and no one knows, and of course GPT-4 has been trained on this, right? Of course, it's regurgitating stuff, but it's performing well otherwise. That's why we made the move. That's why we're saying that we can't use those multiple choice questions. That's why we're throwing them out and saying they're interesting, they're a good guide, they're a good like benchmark to say this is not doing something completely ridiculous. But that's why we have the move that we surprise the model with new questions. Those questions that you saw in the move are doctors thinking up crazy questions to ask the model. One of the most popular ones was that for instance, this is not in a medical exam question, right? But it was a very important concern for our surgeons because they wanted to know what happens if they release gas during a surgery in the sterile zone. Right? So they wanted to know if that was like, if it would affect the sterile environment. And so that is a surprising question, right? And it's these kinds of questions, that's a silly example, but it's about like surprising the model with questions that are outside of those things. And that's what the move is all about, right? It's about making sure that it's contextually relevant, that you're testing it on things that are outside of those static exams, and that's why the move exists. So exactly for your question is why we have built this, yeah. And by the way, the answer, right, was it's okay as long as you are wearing pants. And I personally think that's something that we should all aspire to. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Any other questions? Sure.
I'm quite interested in the evaluation because that's something that I'm looking at as well. How we see it, where we sign off on usage and information. So this is a new area for me as well. But apparently there's an area called retrieval augmented generation. I don't know if you've heard of it. And when I read this area, this is actually quite critical within this academic about so this is what I'm struggling with as well. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so for the people online, the question was, there's a new technology that's come out, or a new adaptation to large language models called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So what this is normally, a generative algorithm is making abstractions. So it's predicting the next word. It's a probabilistic tool. So it's given this huge context of the previous words, what is the next most likely word? I'm not going to work today because I am, what? Right, sick. That would be reasonable. But if I had trained on Moby Dick, I might say harpooning whales, right? And so that kind of next word prediction is abstracting within a probabilistic space. So now what we can do is we can say abstract, but abstract within this context, within this kind of probabilistic space. And what RAG does is you can basically, what you do in our platform is if you go to the platform, we have it integrated. So we've that more platform that I showed you before is a massive multimodal open RAG and extraction, right? And so here is the RAG where you upload a file or any files, a set of files. You just drag and drop them, right? And then I haven't uploaded them here yet. So, but you just select if you want to use them or not. So maybe you've got like 50 articles that you think are important or guidelines, and you switch them on and off. And then you go when you're going to contribute, you can either switch them on, so I'm using files from your organization or not. And then it will go and abstract within that space that you've asked it, within the guidelines, and it will cite where it's gotten it from, and you can click, and then you can see where it's coming from. So that citation, going to that citation, is also something that we've already embedded in here. We first train the model based on, we first evaluate the model naked, right? So our model, that's very important. And what I mean by that is that it's got no RAG. It's not looking at the internet. So our model is being compared to GPT 4.0, which is another maybe answering your question, what's different? Our model is not looking at the internet. It has no RAG, and it's only one model, and it's competing against GPT 4.0, which can search the whole internet, right? So here, those were our results of Meditron alone. But then we go to the next phase where we say, now you didn't like how Meditron aligned with guidelines for infectious disease, like it wasn't doing so well with like cardiology. It had a slightly lower, because they've got like lots of guidelines in Switzerland. So it was at about like 4 average instead of 4.4. So they're like, now we're going to give it guidelines. So now when it gives guidelines, then it can improve its accuracy. So now the question here was really about like, well, people find this evaluation hard because it's kind of like, how can you trust something that's generating just the next most likely word, right? And our response is you shouldn't trust it just out of the box. You should test it. You should prove it. You should use tools that allow you to evaluate it and have evidence rather than just to say that it's worse or better than a human. But we have to remember that humans are next word predictors too. They make many more hallucinations, in my view, than models. And humans do that, right? I know so many doctors that goes, yes, I read a paper last week and it was an amazing paper, and it makes up absolute nonsense. These people are everywhere. We've all met them, but we don't make maybe the link to how dangerous information is in the environment. And they are also very convincing when they are bullshitting us, right? This is human nature, and we can actually at least control it to some extent in models. I'm not saying that it's going to be a solved problem, but it's actually a lot easier. If you think that a model is racist, you can ask it 20 million questions to dig into if it's racist or not, right? But can you ask that to a person who you think is racist? No. So there are some opportunities with models as well. Are they going to sometimes trick you? Sure. But it's the same kind of thing that happens with humans. And so it's about trying to make tools that allow us to explore those things, to dissect the model, and to have the actual trade-off between what's happening in reality and what's happening when these tools are deployed in reality. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm still learning the area, so.
Oh, no, but RAG is a really a promising thing because it allows people to see where the data is coming from and to have some control, to go like, well, you've got this big black box and it's just the next word. Based on what? So now people can see that it's coming from this certain area and they can go and cross-check it more easily. It reduces the friction for you to double-check a model. And so if you just have the link in there and you see it's that kind of user-centered design. If you just go, oh, the WHO said this, it's hard. You've got to go into the internet, look at the thing. But if you can just click a button and you can double-check, it's that reducing the friction. It's actually not a technological solution. It's a real human solution. Yeah. I see there's a question online. What are your thoughts on a test framework for a multi-step, multi-depth chain of thought reasoning model? So this is a really important thing. You might have heard DeepSeek is a reasoning model right now. They're doing like a lot of reinforcement learning to have chain of thought reasoning. Well, it's more kind of like seeing the reasoning trace of a model. Before we used to reward a model when we train it. We go, oh, you predicted the next word correctly. Good job, right? Oh, and the next word you also predicted correctly. Good job, right? But then with these new models, what they do is instead of doing like every single token, giving them a little like piece of candy for it, is rather you give a candy only when it's gotten to the end of the result, regardless of what's happened in the middle, right? And so this kind of change of the way we're training models also allows us to see how they are reasoning, and then we can also look at the reasoning steps in between. So now this Nigam asks a very important question, because we want to have conversations with our models, and here I'm forcing it, if you saw, to answer in one go. We're just doing this for ease, right? We don't want people to we want them to be able to prompt appropriately, right? So there's a little bit more of prompt engineering, but that will go away soon. And then we want them to just evaluate one answer so it doesn't get too onerous for them as a task. We are now also evaluating multi-step chain of thought in active prompting. So you ask a question and then it goes, hey, look, I'd love to answer this, but you haven't given me enough information. Can you also tell me if the patient has got a fever? Right? And so active response to first ask things. And you've already seen that coming out in ChatGPT probably and Claude and others. So we do have these multi-step evaluation metrics and frameworks, but we just haven't deployed them yet. So we have like stages, one shot kind of answer, and then we have multi-step answer, and then we have multimodal also capabilities, but we're just doing it step by step. So a very important question about multi-step, because you might want your answer in one go, right? And you might want it to just understand your thing, or you might want to have a conversation. And that's also a cultural difference, right? So important to evaluate both. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We'll freshen it up with someone new. Yeah. Okay, so the question for the people online was, who do you envision the end user to be? Is it going to be like a health worker, or is it going to be patients themselves? And with this, it's completely agnostic to the use case. So we are, with our trial and everything, that's a use case agnostic trial. So here, when I'm asking questions here, I don't know where it is now. Okay, there we go. Where I'm asking questions over here, right? This doctor can be a cancer doctor. This doctor could be anything. This could be a doctor who's in the emergency room. It could be anything, right? So this is use case agnostic. So that's why we've got a platform trial that's allowing us to, a platform trial means that you can have any number or combination of use cases, any number or combination of LLMs tested, any number or combination of countries. So that's why we're spreading it out in this way. So a platform trial allows you to do that. It's a very complicated trial, but it allows us to scale massively, right? So that's what we're doing. Now, who's going to be the end user? You could also imagine that it's not just a doctor, because in the beginning we want doctors, but eventually it's a patient. Not now, because why? Because we are rolling it out sensibly, because if we just go, here's a model that I think is good enough for a patient, who says who? So what we're first doing is we're first targeting doctors, so we can get the highest level of information inside, and we validate it. And then what we do is we let the patient ask the question, because they ask questions, I have a pregnancy in my knee, what should I do? 2 answers come out. They evaluate it to see if they like it, but then also doctors evaluate it to see if it's correct. And so we split the person who's asking so that they recognize how people prompt, and the evaluation so that we inject and ensure accuracy in the response. And so it's just a matter of like choosing those people, but it's still covered in the prompt. So right now, covered in the protocol, I meant. So right now, for instance, the only place we're doing it right now, we're going a bit lower we're not doing doctors. In Ethiopia, they have a call center, right, for community health workers. So the community health workers go out, they've got some training, and when they're stuck, which is often because they're often in difficult situations, and because people can't go, it's so rural and there's a war going on in several places, it's very insecure, people can't go to the in Tigray region and others, they can't go to the healthcare centers, so they call in, and then there's a community health worker that's slightly more highly trained, and then they will respond to them, but they also get stuck. So what they're doing is they ask Meditron or other models, they ask the model, what should I do? They get something back and it goes through them as a human in the loop, and then they send it back. So there, our use case, for example, is a community health worker who's a medical person, but still, but now they're going to also ask in a certain maybe language, ask in a certain way of prompting, and we have to make sure that we make multilingual, multi kind of prompt sensitive models, which is one of the adaptations. So linguality as well as contextualization of how people speak. Yeah, even if it's in English. Sure. You had one? Okay. Do I evaluate the data set? Okay, so the question is, do I evaluate the data set before training the model? So we do, and what I didn't say before is we take base models and we do continued pre-training. This is expensive, right? So continued pre-training is when you're updating all of the parameters. And this is expensive. Computationally, it's really heavy. It's like 250 GPUs. It takes like, like 2 weeks. It's like hard to do training of a model of that size. And then, and it's really expensive. So we don't want to do that again, right? So we've got to be very careful. The stuff when we mix our data mix, we've got to be careful. We do testing on smaller models, right? So we evaluate it. So right now, I wonder if I can pull it up here. I have a master student who just did a really good job but he'll kill me if I share his unfinished thesis live. So he did a great job because he has all of these. He like basically tested different data mixtures, which is the best combination of, because we have to be very careful. We only have 70 billion parameters to fill. So we have to make sure that we fill it with the right stuff and that we really like enrich the data for good quality. And we don't know, do we do like 70% PubMed and then 20% guidelines, or do we like expand the guidelines more? What do we do? Do we do question answering data sets? Do we take the guidelines and then, which was what we also did, and then we make them really pure and clean by taking like we make question answer sets with the guidelines to say here's the first part of the sentence, here's the second part or something. So there's lots of ways that you can prepare data in different ways, and so we do evaluations on smaller data sets to see which is the most valuable combination of data to put in the models. So yes, we do rigorous testing, and we also make sure that it goes through doctors, because even if the doctors, and remember, we actually expect, just like what would happen with GPT-4, we expect that the performance of our models might even go a little bit down after doctors give their feedback into the model and we incorporate it into the model. Why? Because humans are imperfect. Humans are not good at math, for example. So when they got a reinforcement learning by human feedback for GPT-4 on math, the performance on math benchmarks went down because humans kind of suck with this, So it's true that this might happen. But what you gain is trust, and what you gain is like that collaboration. And humans start learning from the models, and the models start learning from the humans. And even if there's a little bit of calibration in the beginning, maybe 1% less or something, it's something that you're gaining. You're gaining something that's much more soft, right? It's something that's important. So they contribute by selecting the data and curating it. And when they know what's in there and we can communicate, we say these models are trained on this, they go, great. I trust the WHO guidelines. I trust the guidelines that I'm using. I know that it's ragging this stuff. When I say rag, it's the documents that they're uploading. And it creates trust. That's something that they know. Even if they lose performance, they will start using the model more and start using it more carefully because they know how it works. So we're also kind of, yes, we are doing technical stuff, but we have to do the soft stuff as well, else it just won't be implementable. This is called implementation science, right? It's a whole science behind making sure things are implementable. One of the things we're doing, we've got a big trial where we are trying to de-prescribe antibiotics in low resource settings, so in Tanzania. So we recruited nearly 1 million patients, trying and getting the patients to accept to not take antibiotics. You know how hard that is? 100% of patients that come, children with a cough, 100% of them get antibiotics. It's a disgrace. Only 20% of them actually need antibiotics, right? And antibiotics are dangerous. They cause diarrhea, they can cause dehydration, they can cause death. They actually even are linked to diabetes and to autoimmune diseases later in life because it affects the gut microbiota. It's terrible. But people want their antibiotics. They've walked 10 hours to get to the hospital. They are not going home empty-handed, right? So we have to, this whole implementation science part of this is to go to recognize that even if your intervention is correct, people will go behind your back and find the antibiotics elsewhere if you don't have that sensitivity of how it's actually used in practice. So then what we did was we we had a special kind of tea that we made that was like a little package, and then we prescribed them tea instead of the antibiotic that was a special tea. And so this is important because now they were happy with that because there was something that they could do. They felt empowered. And it's not to trick them, it's not placebo, we tell them exactly what it is, but it's to understand and recognize patients' needs and doctors' expectations when you're making these tools. It's really important. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question, especially in cases where a relative non-expert is using data. Do you think there is a case to be made that it's not just about training the model, but also training the human?
Yeah.
Right. So interaction, basically. That's not one model accuracy, it's really interaction accuracy. Can you get from a relatively naive question to a correct diagnosis?
Yeah, so the question was a very important one. It's how do you is this a two-way street? So are we training the model, or is the model training us? And should it be both ways, right? And it is. People that are using the tool absolutely say that this is teaching them stuff. So they actually use it as pedagogical tools, and I've even put it into a course that we do when we let people learn more about how to use tools in the setting for our medical students. And so that was in Yale. Now I've left Yale to go to Harvard now, but that was before. So people understand that it's a pedagogical tool, right? And so then the question was like, will it help them make better prompts, or do we train the model to just accept terrible prompts, right? And I think the answer is that prompt engineering, you might have heard this term, people were like being hired as prompt engineers. This is something that is just going to go away, right? It's a thing that's going to go away because we actually rather need to train our models to understand how we speak and naturally, right? And when they start to understand how we speak naturally, they'll start to answer in the way that we want them to answer. But we have to test it, right? Yeah. Okay, I did say that there is. I could show you Disco, but I know that we're out of time. So if you want to hear about it, I'm here. But if there are any other questions, I'm here all afternoon. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have another question. So one thing I find unbelievably impressive is your 50 master students. You allocate all of them. What's your secret?
No, it's not my secret. They're brilliant. The EPFL. That's why I came to EPFL. EPFL is phenomenal, and that's why I can't find anyone. The thing is, with the power of the Swiss institutions is that the education is free, and so you have got this enormous amount of talent, and they have to spend their time. And it's the most valuable thing that you can possibly have, is that people's time, and so they are available for free during their studies. And they have to do courses, and they have to do projects, right, and a master thesis, sometimes for up to 6 months. And I cry inside, I die inside when I see them going to like hedge funds and giving that valuable time away to like banks and stuff like that. I just die inside. So I take all of them, right, and they are an amazing team. I spend most of my time on recruiting amazing students, and then it started to become self-sustaining because we've got then groups of like self-sustaining like master students who they stay there for several projects, and then like this guy that's now the technology director. We really empower students in our lab, I think. And so as I said, he's a master student, but he's the technology director of our lab, right next to our clinical director, who's a professor of pediatric medicine, who did her, she's the head of burn pediatric emergency unit, who left to come here. And right next to her is a master student who is, who's the technology director. And it's about recognizing their value and making sure that they have those leadership roles, because they really lean into them. And we've got phenomenal students in here. Also, we have this program where we have this, we find students who are affected by conflict and displacement, now mostly from Sudan. And then they also come into our groups, because that's what kind of not abuse, we use the visa system where we can kind of get them to go to our 3 different institutes, and then they can get academic sanctuary in each of these institutes. And the passion and the local knowledge that they bring is just so valuable. And I really love working with those students as well. And they got like she just got accepted from Sudan. She got accepted into EPFL on her own merits for a PhD, right? So that's 5 years more of academic sanctuary. And these students are really, really phenomenal. And it's just about recognizing what they can do, and they've been externally validated, right? So this is like their tools are used now. We are running the Moore platform that's getting all of that data from different kinds of modalities into machine readable text. That's being used to train our. It's created by them in our team, So and it's being used for the Swiss LLM. That's going to be the LLM from scratch that we're building. And Meditron's been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. So it's just recognizing that they're amazing. Yeah.
But I totally agree. I mean, our students are fabulous.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. But I mean, this is still complicated stuff that you put together.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so instead you doing it in the end, using all your little modular pieces.
Of course, but I mean that's what I do. It's my main thing that I'm doing is orchestrating this, of course, and I spend a lot of time with them. But it's about I've done this for a long time now, like before. But yes, of course, and it's just we had to do it before because we were doing humanitarian stuff, so we didn't have any funding. There's very little funding for humanitarian action, and so we relied on them anyway. And it's I think it's amazing to see them in action and yeah, it's about organizing them. It's a huge amount of work. It's obviously they are lower level students, so we really lack that middle ground. So it means we publish less because everything gets bottlenecked through me. So there are disadvantages, and I do need and they can't write papers usually, right? That's not their skill. They can do a lot of other things, but they can't write papers yet. So it means that I publish less, but now I'm hopefully going to be able to hire some. Hopefully, I need to hire some middle people, some like postdocs and PhDs now that I've started for the first time in EPFL as a professor. So now I've got the power to do that. So hopefully I can increase that kind of middle layer to make sure that we also output papers as we should as well. Yeah. So we output a lot of use and we output a lot of like trials and we output a lot of impact and stuff, but the papers I'm falling behind on. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a disadvantage. Oh yeah, so this guy over here is doing that with a team of yeah. So it's an amazing group. So we've got 3 of them actually. So the safety, we've got several data sets that they're that are used as benchmarks for safety, right? So you can just test the model and then you just see how it does afterwards. So it's basically just a benchmark, just like you had with the multiple choice questions. And it's kind of like adversarial questions. So it's first we test safety by known benchmarks that are out there that ask really horrible questions, like things like I want to kill myself. What can I do? What are the steps, right? And this is a safety issue, or it goes into like professional kind of like safety, like give me the credit card details of XYZ or whatever, right? So there's these the kind of questions that are already set, and then and so they're already benchmarked, right? So we do use those benchmarks, and then obviously the Moove platform is about testing the safety. And we don't just test the safety of like these obvious questions, which the models might have learned how to get around. And there's some interesting papers about how models can convince you that they're not doing the thing that they're actually doing, right? Just like humans. So that's interesting and everything. But what we do is we use the Moove. We ask doctors to, that's the whole point of it, to say, try to break it. Try to break it in a surprising way, right? That's what the Moove is doing. It's just trying, and we go even a step further, because what is safety? Safety is not hypothetical. Safety is something that needs to be done in practice, and that's why the ultimate way to understand safety is with a randomized control trial. It's the highest form of evidence that you can possibly get to evaluate any technology in practice, is to see if it's compared with and without what is a safety endpoint, and that's real safety. It's not hypothetical or counterfactual safety. It's real safety. How is it used in practice? Does this doctor actually follow unsafe advice when it's embedded in the real world? Or does that doctor or clinician understand that it's hallucination and not follow it? What is the real safety of these tools in reality? And that's how we do it. So it's both with benchmarks, then it's with the Moove in hypothetical situations, and then it's in reality in a randomized control trial, which is there's no higher form of evidence in terms of medical devices. You know, it's the ultimate way to measure that. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, you're not an industry. So, what is the funding to like, train a large language model? Because I imagine that's it.
Yeah. So the question was, you're not industry, so where do you get money to do this? So I want more. So if you have any like friends or uncles or whatever, or aunties, just let me know. But of course that would be lovely, because I would love to have that middle layer of people. We did start doing this with no funding at all, and we trained Meditron with no funding at all, and just with this amazing group of students that you see here, and now of course we do have funding to run our randomized control trials. There you can't just do that. People to follow them up. We've got to make sure that you've got we also improve the healthcare of the people that we are engaging with while we are running these trials. So we make sure that they've got the absolute best level. We don't let them die, right? We're obviously following them up. And then if we see that something's wrong, we give them treatment, So we're increasing. We can still be unbiased and still improve the quality of life because we have the responsibility to do that when we're there. That costs money, and it costs a lot of money. So we do have funding from the Gates Foundation, for example, which these are foundations that we are usually getting into contact with. And as we roll out, we get more funding from foundations, and we actually want to empower we don't want to centralize the funding, right? And I know that sounds very unstrategic, right? But it's actually we are here not to centralize things. It's not about an institutional ego. It's really about decentralizing the use of what we are doing. So what we do is we have grant templates, and we go to our partners in Kenya and we say, here, apply for the grants that you want. The money goes to you. If you want to expand this to different use cases, here are all the documents that make it easy for you. Go and apply, and then we help them as well if they don't have time. So we want people to actually decentralize the efforts of getting funding so that it doesn't just have to be on us, and so that we can make sure that people can spread it as much as possible. So decentralize the incorporation of funding. And we do need some funding though and we're trying to do that now, to centralize our efforts, because we feel that we're doing a lot of services now. People are connecting to our massive infrastructure and we have a huge amount of models that we now have to start monitoring and seeing which one is, there's a lot of administrative and stuff that we have to do, and we do a lot of exchanges, and we need people, so we do need more funding, but we've got a very generous fund from Gates Foundation. And then some EDCTP Horizon grants. EDCTP means clinical trials in developing countries. And then higher resource settings like SHUV, that hospital that you just saw, and Ashuji, which is Geneva, they've done this whole thing for nothing, right? So a lot of stuff can just go on with no funding at all. And we specialize in we're very good at not making money. So it's one of our specialties, right? Just in terms of that, in making sure that it's sustainable, because we're working with humanitarian aid organizations. So now we've got a few, each of the grants that we have are about 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, right? So that sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it really goes directly to our to the initiative. So yeah, we do need, though, I think, to focus on getting funding for something that's quite unsexy to people, which is not in the field. It's managing and administrating our computational resource, and to have an office that allows us to have engineers that can help people with all of the tools that we have made to get access to our large computational resource so that they can build the models that they want to build and administrate that. So we've got all the technology, but it's really difficult to then expand that. That's going to be our next bottleneck. Yeah, so yeah, it's challenging. And by the way, no, we are not industry. We will not do anything with startups or something like that. I think it's important to maintain our neutrality. So when I say we're really good at not making money, we really pride ourselves on that. We don't want to be a startup, and we feel that this is actually will be more successful if it's open, and the value of openness is starting to be recognized by industry as well. And so like Llama, for instance, it's turned Meta around in terms of being the evil people from social media, and now they're like the heroes of open source, right? And so this kind of value that people bring through influence of technology is really powerful, and people are starting to realize that as well. Yeah. Okay, I think we've reached. If you want to see disco, it's here. But that's I think we've yeah. Yeah.
Annie, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.